Are Americans being poisoned by our own food supply? Let's bring in a couple who may have a thing or two to say about that. Patrick and Ashley Sullivan. We'll bring them in their new documentary, Breaking Big Food, streaming right now on Apple TV and Amazon Prime Video. Good to have you guys on. So, was I being too dramatic that our food supply is and has been poisoning us slowly? What are your thoughts?
Sadly, you were not being too dramatic. Patrick, give us some of the stats on, when the cigarette companies decided to buy up the food companies would be a good place to start.
Well, many people look at like, hey, I used to drink Gatorade and I'm fine. I used to eat Fruit Loops and look at me, I'm fine. But in the last 4 years, folks, the food has changed. Let me give you three facts. In 1985, R.J. Reynolds, the maker of Camel cigarettes, they bought Nabisco for $5 billion. In 1988, Philip Morris, the makers of Marlboro cigarettes, bought Kraft for $13 billion. That's just two examples of some of the largest transactions in M&A history at that time of big tobacco buying food companies. And fact number three, by the mid-1990s, the cigarette industry controlled about 40% of the American food supply.
Eric, what could go wrong, right?
Well, it strikes me that at that moment, 1980s or so, they started putting more warnings on cigarette labels, packaging. People started to get healthier. Maybe the sales of cigarettes were declining, and they were smart, the cigarette companies, who we know they had a $350 billion lawsuit they lost, started to realize, well, hey, maybe we better get into something else. And it strikes me that, no, the carcinogens in cigarettes didn't bother them. Why would carcinogens in food bother them? So tell us, is that part of the reason why they jumped into the food supply?
Well, I think that the end was nigh for big tobacco. The Surgeon General, after decades of essentially fighting against, are cigarettes bad for you? I don't know. 4 out of 5 doctors smoke Camels, so how could they be bad for you? They eventually said, you know what? You're going down. We are going to put a black box warning on cigarettes. So big tobacco kind of looked and said, well, what are we going to do with all this cash? How about we buy some food companies? And then they effectively turned their tobacco scientists into food scientists and looked at ways to make
Addictive?
food last longer.
Oh, addictive
And
also? It would strike me that the nature of why would you do something that would harm you is because you're addicted to it, smoking, drugs, whatever. And it strikes me that maybe they found that secret sauce of how to get people addicted to things to sell more to them. And maybe, okay, not cigarettes anymore, but chips or, different types of sauces and things like that, where you become addicted to these things and can't put them away.
That's exactly right. I mean, they're professionals at making things addicting, so they just applied it to something new.
Interesting. Was there a moment, though, in time? So this happened under the radar. I mean, I remember thinking about the cigarette issues. A friend of mine was one of the lawyers. Her husband was older guy, was one of the lawyers on the big tobacco settlement, $360 billion. And I never saw big tobacco buying the food supply, basically buying, what did you say, something like 30-40% of our food supply eventually?
I certainly don't remember them ever making any announcements. Do you?
well, we were a lot younger then.
I know, but still, our parents would have talked about it.
That was part of the, I think, aha moment when Ashley and I began working on Breaking Big Food. In particular, Callie Means, who is currently working for RFK Jr. in the HHS, and he had written a book with his sister, Dr. Casey Means. Callie acts somewhat as the narrator, explaining how the American food system went rotten. And when he talked about how big tobacco started acquiring big food in the 80s, it was like a light bulb went off in our brains. And we're like, well, of course we would end up with food that is less nutritious, that lasts longer, and that has chemicals that are
Our
addictive.
bodies just are not designed to eat that kind of stuff. I mean, our bodies don't even recognize these chemicals.
So,
So no
so
wonder it disrupts the microbiome and the gut.
Mhm. My question here, I guess, is let's stay on the business aspect of it. We'll get into the biological reasons that it's working for them. always follow the money, right? So who was making money and who was benefiting from us not knowing how dangerous some of these foods are? And it wasn't just big tobacco, right? I mean, you're talking about Pepsi and Coca-Cola and others, but tell us.
Following the money is a great way to figure out, okay, what are the incentives? And you look at like, okay, how can we make more money as a food company? Well, we can make our food more appealing. That's a word to use. You could also say addictive. And so you kind of make the perfect fat, salt, sweet combination. And then you kind of say, well, what can we do to make them eat more of it? Not only like they want to eat it, but how can they eat more of it? And everybody remembers that famous Lay's potato chip commercial. No one can eat just one. Was that the marketing department or the science department that came up with that?
Probably,
problem is
probably science first and made sure marketing was okay with it. And they're like, hey,
the
that
problem
works
is
for
that
us. Yeah.
you can end up eating a whole bag of chips. We've probably all done it mindlessly, eating a whole bag of chips, and you're like, yeah, but I don't even feel full. And that's because the nutrients in the quote unquote food that we're eating out of that bag, the nutrient density, the nutrient quality is so low that the mind is still telling the body, I need more. It's this interesting feedback loop that, okay, I need more food. Callie jokes about how you can't overeat grass-fed steak. And the reason is because it's so nutrient dense that once you start eating it, you're basically like, your body's like, yeah, okay, I'm full. I had 6 ounces or 8 ounces of steak and got the nutrition that was actually in that meal.
And then you dig a little deeper and you find out that like the American Diabetes Association accepts money from companies like Pepsi and
Coca-Cola.
Coca-Cola. And then you start to wonder, that doesn't seem right.
You talk about the marketing and the scientific departments of these companies. Like the marketing wings are immense. I remember one of the first real chip commercials that everyone goes, "Wow, the Doritos!" Remember Caramel Electra Doritos in the Super Bowl, and that just set off this whole celebrity endorsement thing going on. And these things aren't very healthy for us. Is Who is it? So name some names. You said Pepsi now. We've talked about Coke. We talked about big tobacco. Who else? Who are the quiet ones who are feeding us and our kids, frankly, marketing to our kids? Who are the ones that are feeding them unhealthy things and maybe even carcinogens?
Well, I'm reminded of a video that Ian Carroll made going through the cereal aisle and saying, okay, it looks like we have all these different choices of cereal, but who actually owns these cereals? Like, who are we actually buying it from? And it was like 1/3 of the aisle was BlackRock, the other third of the aisle was State Street, and the other third of the aisle was Vanguard because
The three biggest,
all
the three
the
biggest
three biggest
institutional
ventures,
investors in the world. They manage literally trillions of pension funds, et cetera, and they're the biggest buyers of stocks. And so what folks don't realize, I come from that world. What folks don't realize is when the big investment banks or the power players like Vanguard, BlackRock, State Street, they're the three biggest, by the way. When they get involved in a stock, they become activists within that stock. So they become board members of the company and they change the way. And so their interest is one thing only: money, dollars, not health, not does it satisfy people, does it do good in the world, just money. And I guess what you're saying, Patrick, is the dollar is so dominant in these discussions, in these boardrooms, that the health aspects of it take at least the second or third level to the money aspect.
I really think so, and it does roll all the way up to the boardroom and earnings per share. And that's how the decisions are being made because that's legally how they have to make decisions, right? The board has to make decisions in the interest of the shareholders, not necessarily the interest of the customers. However, I think that there is some hope. And that really started in 2025 when RFK Jr. was nominated and accepted the position as the head of Health and Human Services. And one of his first meetings that was held amongst all the big food names, all the big food companies, was to discuss, we're going to be reforming the food, And we'd like to start with the petroleum-based food dyes. So shout out to Food Babe, who has done a lot of posting about
Oh, well.
when I referenced earlier, hey, I used to drink Gatorade. It should be okay today, right? Well, it's like, yeah, but now it's got all sorts of food dyes and high fructose corn syrup and carnauba wax or whatever in
Yeah,
it,
the
right?
ingredients are not the same.
So
And
yeah.
so
Yeah, I
reportedly,
want you guys to tell me some of the other products. Like, tell me some of the most dangerous products that we may not know are dangerous that we are consuming on a daily basis again, or giving it to our
Well, I would
younger.
say one of the biggest things to keep an eye out for are the seed oils that have crept into literally everything, and they are in items in the grocery store that are being marketed as health foods, like hummus and uh, salad dressings, and all these different sauces you can buy. I mean, literally, it's in everything. You have to learn how to read a label. We are not able to depend on the government to protect our health. We have to start taking control of our own health and start learning, because that's the only way that we're going to get better.
Name some names, Patrick. Give me some names. I want to hear product. I want to hear brands, products.
the most important names are RFK, and specifically what he is doing to push these food companies. I started to talk about a meeting that he held talking about food dyes and saying we are going to remove the petroleum-based food dyes from the food. You already know and already make Fruit Loops that look totally different in different countries versus what we have here. And the good news is the food companies seemed to be receptive to that. They basically said, you need to remove food dyes for all of us, because if one company can use it and another company decides against it, well, let's say Nabisco says, we're going to remove food dyes, but Kellogg's decides that they're going to keep it. Well, Kellogg now has a distinct color advantage
They have
and cost advantage over Nabisco, who's switching to a healthier alternative. So those changes are starting to happen, and we have hope, actually.
Ashley, I think in your movie at one point you say some people think they're, I guess, allergic to eggs and maybe other products as well, or other things as well that maybe they're not. Tell us what you mean.
So essentially, a lot of people think that they can't handle eggs when, in fact, if the chickens were fed a diet that was free of corn and soy, which a lot of people have allergies towards, then they can all of a sudden handle eggs. Now, those are very hard to find in the grocery store. Good luck finding something that where the chickens have not been fed corn or soy. The really best way to do that is find a local farmer who's doing it properly and feeding their chickens clean.
So,
But
so organic
yeah,
eggs alone does not signify that the chicken is being fed the proper way.
exactly. And really, because of the subsidies, like the corn subsidies, that corn is used in literally everything. That's where we're talking about aligning the incentives. The incentives have to change from the top down. That's really what I feel like is one of the most important things that government could do, is change the incentive structure. So
Let me
that
stay with
the
you,
food
Ashley.
companies,
Let me say with you. I've note of high fructose corn syrup is in literally almost every product you consume,
yeah.
some way or form. Peanut allergies. When I grew up, maybe one person a year in one of my classrooms had a peanut allergy. Now it seems like, I don't know, a third of the kids in the classrooms are claiming peanut allergies. We can talk about juvenile diabetes as well, but let's start with the allergies first.
Well, the best science that I've heard is that we started to create a peanut allergy boom simply by avoiding peanuts in first year of life. So allergies, our bodies essentially, when we're developing, our immune system learns how to deal with peanuts, learns how to deal with all the food that is around us. And we don't really go into that in our movie, so I'm getting a little bit outside of my expertise, but I know that there are products being developed for first year of life that effectively are these little almost crackers that are like a mixture of peanuts and shellfish and all the things that people tend to be allergic to.
In
If
small amounts,
if
so that it can like
right.
safely start to introduce
So it's like a vaccine almost, so without the without the pharma attached to it, just a more of a natural
more like a natural
vaccine.
one.
Yeah.
Correct.
Patrick, you say you had thyroid cancer. at one point. Do you ever attribute anything that you were consuming to be a contributing factor to that?
I do. I think my own cancer was multifactorial. I think that the food, the stress, poor sleep, and quite frankly, not moving enough, not exercising and working out, I think all four of those things very much contributed to my thyroid cancer. It was January of 2014. I was driving home from work and felt a lump in my throat, not metaphorically, like a literal lump on the outside of my throat, and thought, that doesn't seem good. About 4 weeks later, I got a diagnosis. You have cancer. And it was the worst 3 words I've ever heard in my life. It was actually more stressful, I feel like, than the stress I had been under previously. So long story short, after getting, second opinion, third opinion, fourth opinion, no one could really explain to Ashley and I how the cancer really got there in the first place. So we decided to do the thyroidectomy, where they surgically remove the thyroid, simply because it was so stressful. And then we kind of buried that chapter of our life for a while.
Because no one could tell us how to avoid it from happening again or how it got there. And it was very frustrating. So we just kind of threw our hands up and we're like, thank God it's gone. But when we started to hear Callie Means talk about just chapter and verse of how the American food system went rotten, how we ended up here, and how the food matters so much, the light bulb went on and we traced it back to that time and said, we have to help amplify this message. This is the message that Americans need to hear.
There's a little anecdote, side note to all this. I work with a lot of food. We do a lot of it on the show. I work with RFK Jr. I know him very well. We've met. Um, we've done presentations together, and I keep pushing the government, whether it's RFK or whomever needs to be. I keep pushing them to pull things like chips and Pepsi and Coke, the things that we don't aren't our basic staples. Take that off the EBT cards. Just don't allow people to get all the meat they need to buy or produce they need to buy.
Amen.
But let's not allow them to buy sodas and chips and, frankly, beer. A lot of times there's a lot of ways to do it with beer too. So, I want to make this about government because this show's not political. It's about common sense, and I think common sense would say, we have a nutritional supplement program, but it should be exactly that: supplement nutrition, not chips and BS bullshit, Coke and Pepsi and other, what do they call them? Sweet and salty snacks. Is that what they call them?
Real nutrition.
Yeah, real nutrition. Just for a little minute here, I want to talk a little about your movie. How did the movie come about? Who pitched it? How'd you pitch it? And I really want to ask you, while you're doing this, did Amazon or Apple get involved in what you can or cannot say in that movie?
Well, it really was the summer of 2024 when we started to hear Callie Means speak. Actually, it was at a health conference that we were at, and his explanation of how we got here, and it inspired us so much that we did decide, we need to figure out how to amplify this message. And we have an incredible creative team at our company that we were like, this is our next big project. We're going to highlight this and we're going to help amplify it. And we reached out to Callie and said, hey, we think that you would be a great person to essentially narrate how the American food system went rotten part of this documentary. And he loved it. He said, I'm all about it. And so we're very grateful that he said yes to help us bring this to life. I'll let Patrick speak to.
Well, thinking back, that was about 2 or 3 weeks before I ever heard the phrase MAHA, Make
That's
America
right.
Healthy Again.
Mhm.
But it seemed like the universe was kind of opening the door for us to push this project through. We didn't know Callie at the time, but having his blessing and his excitement to it, and then having him part of President Trump's transition team, helping to get Bobby into HHS, all those kinds of things were happening simultaneously to us basically making this documentary. To your question, Apple and Amazon, did they have any say? Actually, they do not have any creative control on this documentary. We were a little nervous. The documentary itself is not political, but it definitely touches on some hot buttons related to how we got here and how it's being revived. And in the film, I actually said to Callie, it was captured on tape, I said, we've been so divided in this country for so long. Maybe food is the thing that can unite us
Yes.
because we all have to eat. Unfortunately, it seems in these past 2 years, food has become rather political as well.
But I will say the minute we released the trailer on TikTok, we were
Oh, gosh.
immediately banned and had to fight back on that. Luckily, we were able to get that lifted, but it was like banned for misinformation just immediately.
Of
And
course,
it's like,
of course. If it's even remotely controversial, or if you mention Maha or RFK, you immediately get that the red flags go up in a lot of the media. I want to talk again. I won't get political on this. Final question. Let me start with you, Ashley, and both of you. The question: if people watching this right now don't change anything, what happens? Will we live shorter lives or just less healthy lives?
probably both, but essentially that puts you in the seat of the victim. And we are not victims. We have power. We have a lot more power than they've ever led us to believe over our health and our outcomes. So if we just sit back and do as they say and trust that everything is safe and just don't take responsibility for our choices, we become the victim.
Yeah.
Patrick?
That's a great answer, Ash. I think that we are finding most Americans, even post, COVID, still have some trust and faith in the government and the FDA that they're looking out for us, and there wouldn't be stuff on the shelves
Unless
that
it
would
was
be
safe.
potentially bad for us unless it was safe. But let me give you 3 more facts. Number 1, the United States makes up 4% of the world's population. Number 2, we account for somewhere between 50 to 75% of global pharmaceutical profits. And number 3, we rank 49th in life expectancy. So to answer your question, if we just keep the status quo, we are going to live shorter lives
And sicker.
and sicker lives. So the time to make the change really is now. And we hope that our documentary, Breaking Big Food, can provide some inspiration and really show how the American food system is being revived from the ground up at the local level.
It's amazing that 1, 2, 3 you just pointed out. I'd say 1 and 3, if you put those together, it says it all. Right now, we make up 4% of the population, and our life expectancy is 47th in the world. That is just an amazing pair of statistics. Patrick, Ashley Sullivan, the movie is called Breaking Big Food on both Apple and Amazon. How'd you get on both, by the way?
You just have to know people.
Well, introduce them to us. We would love to hear. Patrick, Ashley, appreciate your time. Thank you for great information, folks. You got to watch this documentary. It's a great food special, especially you want to be healthy or you want your kids and family to be healthy. Make America healthy again. Starts at home, right there. Maybe start with watching the documentary. Thank you guys both.
Thank you.
Eric.
At some point, you realize something is off. You're working, you're paying attention, you're doing what you're supposed to do, and still it's not adding up. That is the moment right there. But most people ignore it. I don't. On The Edge, we break down what's actually happening, why prices aren't what they seem, why healthy isn't always healthy. In fact, sometimes it's labeled healthy, it's actually killing you. Ever wonder why some people keep moving forward while others stay stuck in place, in a rut? The Edge, we expose the posers, the fraudsters, and the cheatsters. On The Edge, no politics, no lectures, no wasted time, just clarity, pure thought, success. Because once you see how it really works, you stop playing it the old way, the easy way, and you start winning at work, in relationships, and perhaps most importantly, in your health. New episodes every week. If you're ready for that shift, subscribe to The Edge. This moment is the moment where it all changes. Why wait till tomorrow to start your journey to a healthier life? Start today. And the first step to that healthier life is by hitting that subscribe button. Do it now. Thousands have already done just that.